Do we think the whole thing plays off the jealousy between the two of them?
Yeah,
it's not,
and the differing personalities.
At the start it is jealousy because they fight, and then there's that scene where they explain, there comes a point where brothers realise their differences and then they don't fight anymore and they just accept
I like that line.
And then they play with that quite nicely because he's obviously jealous of Norman's jealous of Paul being funny, and then at the same time he gets his job and Paul's there going, oh, you've got your fancy job, haven't you? And it plays with this sort of jealousy and admiration quite nicely between them.
Yeah, he admired him, but I never thought he was jealous. I always thought
I didn't get that.
Maybe jealousy isn't the right, but certainly at the start it is with the dancing and when they're in that speakeasy, and Norman sat there watching him with his new girlfriend, going, why can't I do that type of thing, and a lot of it is admiration.
So I think my argument is that if it's a film that's going to have a message, I think it's a story that needs to be told. But do any of you think this story needed to be told? Do you think that it might well be an interesting book, but do you think it needed to be put to a movie? Do you think it translates well?
Yeah, it was quite accessible in the cinematic form. I think obviously lots more people will go and watch a Robert Redford film than would have, just read the book alone. So it expands the story out to a broader audience. And I think it's a film that a lot of people can get some value from. I think it wasn't so much a telling of events as it was a kind of using sequences to express ideas.
Yeah, I fully got that.
You get that, James? Yeah, because I just figured there was, I wrote a few of them down. There are a few like kind of philosophies or principles that I think were being expressed in like a particular scene. I wrote them down. Oh, that's notable. That's interesting. I've got one that was about telling his son that he needs to keep working on this thing. He says, you need to go back and do it again. You need to halve it or something along those lines. You need to make it, half as long. And then he goes back and does it again, brings it back. And there's a lot of discipline and stuff shown there towards his son. And like, keep going, keep whittling, refining and all this stuff, the process. And then when he finally gets it, he just says, now throw it away. And I think that's an interesting idea. The idea of, and I've read it in other places as well in different contexts and different forms, but it's essentially the idea that once you've fully prepared, once you've fully, mastered a particular technique or whatever it is, chuck it away and move on, move to the next thing, leave that behind. It's not necessarily behind, it's just that the work itself is kind of, it's been done. You've learned and you can move on. And I quite liked that idea. And I feel like the scene itself was just, it was only really there to express that idea. I mean, there was a little bit of character work, but I just kind of found that interesting. There's other ideas in there, the idea of the river, the analogies of the fly fishing, all of that sort of stuff. But I just thought it was a film full of ideas, interesting ideas. And I think that made the work worth the watch.
What did you guys feel that the fly fishing element represented? What for you? I'm interested to know, because I've got a pretty clear idea of what it meant to me, but what did you guys feel?
Gem or whoever else. I feel like Gem has enough.
No, I thought it was interesting that, I'll come on to what you said, Robbie. So I think it's interesting that it won Best Cinematography. He got the Academy Award for it, I'm pretty sure. But
Did it?
It did, yeah, it did.
Yeah, it did. I don't know what the competition was. Like, it was good. Yeah. But there was.
Oh, it was beautiful.
Do you know the thing? I thought the cinematography was bloody fantastic.
Yeah,
Jesus
yeah, it was beautiful. It was a beautiful film.
I spent the whole time thinking, Jesus.
But how much of that is you could have captured that with an iPhone in Montana just looked.
Back in 1992.
No, I know. It was. Yeah, I'm saying it was good, but.
I thought it was sensational.
It was Montana.
It was beautiful setting. They did have that.
It would have been better in a definition higher than 480p, which is unfortunately what I had to watch it in. But I mean, the river was pixelating quite a lot, but I still got the message.
It was the category was.
I like the thing at the end, which was like no fish were harmed in the making of this, and they
really.
Yeah. So I looked at that and was like, okay, I Googled it, and they effectively tied them on lines, which, like, with some society that made sure that they were not harmed, and then they like released them into the river, and then they went fly fishing, and then they just sort of like pulled on these lines and caught the fish again, put them back in the pond from where they came from again. It's so weird.
So, I mean, to be fair, the category for cinematography in the 1993 Academy Awards, it wasn't actually that competitive. It was Hoffa, Howard's End, The Lover, and Unforgiven, and A River Runs Through It won it.
Unforgiven?
So it wasn't...
Unforgiven? That should have won, man. That was beautifully filmed, that film. Clint Eastwood, have any of you seen it?
No, it's a Western though, isn't it?
Tom, have you seen Unforgiven?
Tom's gone.
He's gone. He's had enough. He's called it a call today.
Actually.
In answer to your question, James, about what fly fishing symbolised, the way I look at it is sort of it was the one symbol of unity between all of the family members, but also just a sense of freedom and liberation that they got from it. Each character felt there was a different feeling towards it by each character. Obviously, Brad Pitt's character sort of started relying on it. Relentlessly by the end. It was sort of woven into the fabric of who he was. So I don't know what... I haven't had a chance to think about what that could have meant for him at the end. But those sort of themes there, because it's a key element to it.
Guy, why don't you think he could leave?
Pardon?
Why don't you think he could leave Montana?
That's a good question. I don't know. Why don't I think he could leave Montana? I mean, part of it when he delivered that line, part of me just thought, well, it's just fate saying that line anyway, because it's sort of just, given what happens to him in the end, it could have been just that poetic foreshadowing.
But he's saying the line, he knows.
See, I think
do you think it's because he doesn't feel like he would survive outside anywhere other than what he knows within his small boundaries in Montana?
I agree.
It's survival, though. Do you think?
Because he refused to go to Chicago as well.
I think he's a hometown. I think deep down he's a hometown person, though, isn't he? Because everywhere he goes, he likes the fact that people know him. He's a familiar face. He knows the people on the door. He went to the local college. Like, he clearly he comes across as someone that's very confident, but in reality, he's one of these people that is comfortable being a big fish in a small pond rather than venturing out. I think that's what he meant by it. Or did you think it was deeper and more symbolic?
He's severely insecure in who he is. Even though it might not be so obvious on the outside, but I got that.
How soon into the film? Because it took me quite a while. I remember I kept thinking of him as this kind of like charismatic, charming figure who knew it all. Like he just had a hold on life. He just knew what he was doing, and it took me quite a while to kind of like start to look at him in scenes and think like he's hiding something. Like there's some kind of
It was the stories. It was the stories for me.
Yeah.
When he sat round the dinner table telling those stories, I was just like, this is a guy who just who needs to keep the facade that his work is giving him energy, when he is one of those guys that doesn't live to work. He works to live, like, to the absolute extreme.
How early in Brad Pitt's career?
What's that? Sorry, Jem?
How early
in Brad Pitt's career is this? Was this like
very? It's not. Early. No. He was 29 when they shot the film. He's 29 in it.
Oh, is it a film that defined him or not, or was it?
No, I don't think so.
No. In terms, when I say defined him, I don't mean people go, "Oh, it's Brad Pitt from that film." I mean, did people go, "That guy can act"?
It put his staple down as being a bloody good-looking dude. Let's say that.
But it's a good question, though. I think that Legends of the Fall, they would have cast him in that directly as a result of this film, don't you, James? He's a very similar character.
Very similar character.
Kind of outlier to the family. He has a little bit of a tension with his father. There's a respect there between them. In fact, it's the same dynamic as him with Anthony Hopkins in Legends of the Fall, isn't it? It's pretty much the same. So I definitely think that they used that film to cast him in other similar roles for a few years. But obviously, Brad Pitt's Brad Pitt, so he could be kind of like 3 years later he made Seven, for example. But,
yeah.
James, what did you think the fly fishing symbolised?
For me, it was all about self-expression. It was the way in which the characters were able to, I think, express their differences to one another. And particularly interestingly, I think for both the boys, the way in which it showed how much you can teach someone something and how much they then have to learn through their own experience. Like for Paul, he was one of those. I think I related to Paul quite a lot, because I could see a lot of, someone teaches you something and then there's only so much, and then you think you know better, and then you have to try your own like kind of techniques. And then even between Paul and Norman, you have a scene, I think, where he first returns and comes fishing with him. And Paul's like giving him advice, like, no, you want to cast a little bit further into the current, that's where you get it. And he's like getting pissed off. And then Paul goes and walks around the corner, and then Norman's like, now I can just do it myself, and I can kind of go at my own flow, my own rhythm. And then he starts pulling out fish. And it's just about being comfortable in your own space and doing things your own way. For me, that's what it was.
I think that goes hand in hand with what you just said as well, in terms of questioning when we sort of first started feeling like that Paul was a bit sort of insecure in himself. I think it's the moment that Norman returned back as an adult, when he returned back from Chicago, because you can see when they're both sat at his desk, and then Paul's there sort of going, joking about, the professor, look at you, the professor, have a drink, blah, blah. And I think even from that point, I think he feels inferior, and like you say, he loves the fact that people know that he's the fly fishing journalist or whatever. And then he suggests immediately, let's go fishing, because I feel like he almost wants to assert his authority over their relationship once again. And then that twists in with what you're saying, James.
Man, I never saw that.
I didn't get that.
And that then fits with what you're saying, James, about him then saying, oh, you want to do this when you do. But Norman knows that, I don't, let me do my own thing, because Norman's gone off and been to Chicago and he's doing his own different life. But Paul is not as confident and self-assured in himself, so he has a feeling he needs to assert himself over others, and whether it's through fly fishing, so be it.
Interesting perspective.
I feel like you and Jem have got a similar theme there.
Yeah, you have. You both have. It's interesting. Because I always figured that he just wanted to go and have some fun with his brother he hadn't seen in years. Like, I thought they just like, here's an experience we shared as children, as brothers. Let's go back and do that shit again. You know what I mean?
There's the underlying sibling rivalry throughout it. Yeah, like
I really didn't get that. I really didn't get that.
Having a brother, like, neither me or Joel fly fish, but if we went fly fishing, we would measure all the fish we caught and double check which one was better. And I think, and that's not a bad thing at all.
That's a bit of Jungian projection going on, I think, over there.
But that's the whole acceptance. I think Paul then starts to come to accept that when at the end, when he's there going, what are they biting on? Because Norman's clearly catching massive fish, and then he sort of laughs across the river and goes, no, I'll come get the bait, blah blah, it's fine. Like all that. I think that's the turn, and that's when Norman then goes, or then suddenly I realise, he's a great fisher, all that kind of stuff, and that's sort of the turn of events, and then bam, the climax happens.
Yeah. They contrast it with an art, and like, I mean, I've done a bit of sea fishing, not fly fishing at all. Fly fishing is really, as you can see, really active. You're standing there, waving it back and forth, and you're in the river. Like it's so different to standing on a pier and just sort of waiting for something to fall. But they compare it to an art, and I can just imagine it being so fiddly and like impossible. But they obviously, having to be brought up by someone like their dad, it's like I think one of the opening lines is like, fly fishing is religion, or to the father or something, and it's so. And that parallel is what they sort of run with throughout the entire film, is that fly fishing is the link to them as people.
Can we outline what we didn't like about this film? Are there any main things that we didn't like? Tom, do you have anything that you really, really specifically didn't like about this film?
In terms of style, anything like that, no. Like you said at the beginning, it's just nice. Like it's okay. It's an all right. Like it's nothing's offensive. Like Jem said, I'm surprised that out of the awards it was nominated for, it won cinematography. I guess some of the fly fishing shots were nice, but I just don't think it's a story that needed to be told. It didn't give me a lot. I didn't get much from the characters other than Brad Pitt, who I thought was great. Didn't really like the perspective it was told from. But yeah, it was just quite non-offensive, but at the same time not rewarding.